The massive screens in the United Earth Defense Chamber displayed the sneering faces of the Galactic Council members. Their expressions ranged from amused to outright contemptuous as they looked down at the human delegation. Commander James Reed stood straight back before them, his weathered face betraying no emotion despite the howls of laughter echoing through the chamber. "You expect us to believe," the head counselor wheezed between chuckles, "that your species has mastered seventh-dimensional travel. You, who barely learned to break light speed a century ago." Dr. Anna Wells, standing beside Reed, clutched her datapad tighter. Her knuckles turned white, but her voice remained steady. "Our calculations are correct, Council. We have found a way to breach the dimensional barriers. We seek only to share this knowledge with the galactic community." This sparked another round of laughter. The Watcher's representative, a tall being with silvery skin that rippled like mercury, leaned forward. Its multiple eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of extreme amusement in their species. "Little humans," it said, voice dripping with condescension, "your species still thinks in such limited terms. We have studied dimensional physics for 50,000 years. Your primitive understanding of reality barely scratches the surface of 3 dimensions, let alone 7. Reed exchanged a quick glance with Admiral Blake, who sat in the front row of the chamber. The Admiral gave an almost imperceptible nod. They had expected this reaction. In fact, they had counted on it. "Perhaps a demonstration," Dr. Wells began, but was cut off by the thunderous voice of the Krull representative. "Demonstration?" The massive being roared. "You would waste the Council's time with party tricks. We have seen your current technology. Your fastest ships are like crawling insects compared to our fleets." In the back of the chamber, Earth's other scientists shifted uncomfortably. But Reed and Wells remained unmoved. They had spent 5 years preparing for this moment, working in secret beneath Europa's icy surface. The Project Prometheus was ready, despite what these arrogant species thought. "We understand your skepticism," Reed said calmly. "Humanity has always been underestimated. When we first reached for the stars, you laughed. When we developed our first FTL drive, you called it primitive. Yet here we stand, a member of the galactic community." "A junior member," the head counselor corrected. "And one that apparently suffers from delusions of grandeur. Seventh-dimensional travel requires an understanding of cosmic strings, quantum folding, and reality manipulation that your species won't achieve for thousands of years." Dr. Wells stepped forward. Her brown eyes flashed with determination. "With all due respect, Council, you're wrong. We've done it. We found a way to traverse not just space, but the dimensional planes themselves. We can demonstrate." "Enough." The Watcher representative's skin rippled with irritation now. "This mockery of science has gone on long enough. The Council has real matters to discuss. Your species was granted this audience as a courtesy, nothing more." Reed felt a subtle vibration from his communication device. Right on schedule. He allowed himself a small smile, one that didn't go unnoticed by the Council. "You find something amusing, Commander Reed?" the head counselor asked, eyes narrowing. "Just thinking about history, sir," Reed replied. "About how often the impossible becomes possible, especially when humans are told they can't do something." The chamber erupted in dismissive chatter. The council members spoke among themselves, some pointing at the human delegation and laughing, others shaking their heads in dismay. They had seen many young species come forward with grand claims, but this was beyond ridiculous. "The council's decision is final," the head counselor announced. "This session is adjourned. And humans, do not waste our time with such fantasies again." As the screens went dark, Admiral Blake approached Reed and Wells. "Well?" he asked quietly. Dr. Wells nodded, her expression finally breaking into a smile. "Everything according to plan, sir. They reacted exactly as we predicted. Their arrogance blinds them." "Good," Blake said, "because the Prometheus just completed its final test run. We're ready." Reed looked up at where the council's faces had been moments before. "Let them laugh," he said softly. They won't be laughing much longer. Deep beneath Europa's icy surface, in a cavern large enough to house a small city, the HMS Prometheus waited. The ship didn't look impressive at first glance, just a sleek, dark vessel about the size of an old Earth destroyer. But appearances, as humanity was about to prove, could be deceiving. Dr. Wells walked through the ship's main corridor, her footsteps echoing against the metal floor. Engineers and technicians rushed past her, performing final checks and adjustments. The air hummed with tension and excitement. After 5 years of secrecy, their project was finally ready. Status report, Commander Reed asked, falling into step beside her. His uniform was wrinkled, and dark circles under his eyes showed he hadn't slept much. The dimensional core is stable, Wells replied, bringing up holographic diagrams on her tablet. All 7 layers are in perfect alignment. The Watchers and their fancy council would have a fit if they knew we'd solved the quantum string problem with basic Earth mathematics. Reed smiled. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. Though I doubt they'd call manipulating 7 dimensions of space-time simple. They reached the bridge, a circular room dominated by screens and holographic displays. The bridge crew worked at their stations, running simulations and checking systems. Through the main viewport, they could see the massive hangar that housed the Prometheus, carved from Europa's ancient ice. Admiral Blake is on the line, Lieutenant Cooper announced from his communication station. He says the council took the bait. They're completely convinced we're bluffing. Perfect. Reed settled into the captain's chair. Dr. Wells, show me the core. Wells gestured, and a complex hologram appeared in the center of the bridge. It showed 7 concentric spheres, each rotating in a different direction. At their heart, a point of light pulsed with impossible colors. The 7th dimension isn't up or down, forward or back, past or future, Wells explained to the bridge crew. It's everywhere and nowhere. The Watchers spent 50,000 years trying to breach it with brute force. We simply asked it nicely to let us in. In English, Doctor? Reed asked, though his eyes twinkled with amusement. We're going to step sideways through reality, Wells said. The Prometheus won't just move through space. It'll exist in multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. We'll be able to appear anywhere, bypass any defense, and perform actions that should be physically impossible. A young engineer raised his hand. But Doctor, won't the power requirements be massive? By conventional standards, yes. But that's where humanity's greatest discovery comes in. Wells brought up another diagram. We're not forcing our way through dimensions. We're surfing them, using their own energy to power our movements. The more they try to stop us, the more power we'll have. Reed stood up, addressing the bridge crew. What we're about to do will change everything. The council thinks we're primitive, barely worth their notice. They've blocked our colonies, restricted our trade, all because they think they know better. Today, we prove them wrong. The ship's internal speakers crackled. Commander Reed, engineering reports all systems are green. We're ready for final power-up. Very well. Reed looked at Wells. Doctor, would you do the honors? Wells stepped forward, placing her hand on the main control panel. 5 years of work, countless sleepless nights, and the combined efforts of Earth's best minds had led to this moment. She took a deep breath and pressed the activation sequence. The lights dimmed briefly as power flowed into the dimensional core. The 7 spheres in the hologram began spinning faster, their boundaries blurring. The point of light at the center grew brighter. Core stability at 100%, reported Lieutenant Cooper. All systems nominal. Sir, we did it. It's actually working. Reed nodded, satisfaction clear on his face. Humanity's greatest achievement, hidden right under their noses. Send word to Admiral Blake. Project Prometheus is go for Phase 2. As the crew celebrated quietly at their stations, Wells stared at the pulsing core hologram. Soon, the entire galaxy would understand what humanity was truly capable of. The Watchers had spent 50 millennia trying to unlock the universe's secrets. Humanity had done it in less than a century. The laughter would stop soon enough. The Watcher fleet appeared without warning. One moment, the space around Earth was clear. The next, over 2,000 warships filled the sky, their silver hulls gleaming in the sunlight. They positioned themselves in a perfect sphere around the planet, engines glowing with barely contained power. Admiral Blake stood in Earth Defense Command, watching the tactical display with growing concern. Red dots representing Watcher vessels surrounded not just Earth, but every human colony and outpost in the solar system. Mars, Europa, Titan, all blocked by the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Message from the Watcher command ship, announced the communications officer. Text only. Put it on screen, Blake ordered. The message was brief and cold. For your own protection, the Galactic Council has authorized a temporary blockade of all human territories. This is for your safety and development. Resist, and we will be forced to take corrective action. They're cutting off our supply lines, Blake's second-in-command said quietly. The outer colonies won't last a month without resources from Earth. Blake's fists clenched. On another screen, he could see the panic spreading. The media was broadcasting images of the Watcher fleet, their massive ships casting shadows over major cities. People were rushing to stores, stockpiling supplies. Fear was spreading faster than any official announcement could contain it. Sir, a junior officer ran up with a datapad. Reports from Titan Colony. Their oxygen recyclers need replacement parts. Mars Agricultural Station reports their hydroponic systems are failing. They need technical support from Earth. And let me guess, Blake said grimly, the Watchers aren't letting any ships through. No, sir. They're turning back everything. They say it's non-essential travel. In the conference room next door, Earth's political leaders argued loudly about their next move. Some wanted to surrender to the Council's demands and admit the dimensional travel project was a hoax. Others called for military action, despite knowing Earth's fleet was no match for the Watchers. Blake's secure communicator buzzed. It was Commander Reed. Tell me you have good news, James, Blake said, stepping away from the chaos of the command center. The Prometheus is ready. Reed's voice was steady. Dr. Wells says we can launch at any time. But, sir, if we do this, there's no going back. The Watchers will see it as an act of war. Blake looked out the window at the Watcher ships hovering over the city. They're already treating us like enemies. Report from Titan just came in. They've got less than a month of oxygen left. The Watchers know exactly what they're doing. Trying to force us to submit, Reed said. Break our spirit. They don't understand humans very well, do they? Blake managed a small smile. How long until you can launch? 3 hours to power up the dimensional core. But sir, the Watchers have sensors all over Europa. The moment we start the sequence, they'll know something's happening. A warning alarm blared through the command center. Blake turned to see more red dots appearing on the tactical display. The Watcher fleet was tightening their formation, moving closer to Earth and its colonies. Message from Watcher Command. The communications officer called out. They're demanding we hand over all research related to dimensional travel. They say if we don't comply within 24 hours, they'll begin humanitarian relocation of our outer colonies. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. The Watchers would forcibly evacuate the colonies, stranding millions of humans on overcrowded Earth. It would be the end of humanity's expansion into space. Blake's voice was ice-cold when he spoke to Reed. You have new orders, Commander. Launch in 2 hours. I don't care if the core isn't at full power. The Watchers want to see our dimensional travel technology. He paused, watching another Watcher ship move into position over the city. Let's show them exactly what humanity has created. Yes, sir. Reed's voice had a hint of anticipation. Time to end their laughter. As Blake ended the call, he sent a coded message to every Earth defense vessel in the system. Operation Prometheus is go. Stand by for the impossible. The crisis had reached its breaking point. In 2 hours, the galaxy would learn why it was a mistake to back humanity into a corner. Europa's icy surface erupted. The massive hidden doors, disguised for years as natural formations, slid open with a grinding sound that echoed across the moon's frozen wasteland. Inside the carved-out hangar, the HMS Prometheus hummed to life, its hull vibrating with barely contained energy. Multiple Watcher ships approaching. Lieutenant Cooper reported from his station. They're broadcasting warnings on all frequencies. Commander Reed stood on the bridge, his uniform crisp despite the tension in the air. Let them come. Dr. Wells, status of the dimensional core. 70% and climbing. Wells answered, her fingers dancing across the control panels. Not ideal, but it'll have to do. The good news is, they still think we're just a regular ship trying to break the blockade. The Watcher vessels grew larger on the main screen, their sleek silver hulls bristling with weapons, their transmission cut through the ship's communications. Unidentified human vessel. Power down immediately. This is your only warning. Compliance is mandatory. Reed pressed the ship-wide comm button. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. He turned to Wells. Doctor, are you absolutely sure the core will hold at 70%? Wells didn't look up from her calculations. We're about to find out. But Commander, even at reduced power, what we're about to do will rewrite physics as they know it. Watcher ships entering weapons range, Cooper announced. They're charging main guns. Let them, Reed said calmly. Helm, take us out. Nice and slow, like we're just a foolish human ship making a run for it. The Prometheus lifted off smoothly, emerging from its icy hideaway like a whale breaching the surface. To the Watcher's sensors, it would appear as nothing more than a standard Corvette-class vessel, tiny compared to their massive warships. They're laughing at us, Cooper said, listening to the Watcher communications. They're literally laughing, sir, calling us primitive fools. Core at 80%. Wells announced. Better than expected. Ready on your mark, Commander. The first warning shot from a Watcher ship flashed past their bow, a streak of energy designed to intimidate. More Watcher vessels appeared, forming a hemisphere above Europa. Their weapons charge, creating a web of targeting lasers. Last chance to surrender, humans, the Watcher commander's voice boomed through the bridge. Your pathetic attempt to break our blockade will only end in your humiliation. Reed smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Dr. Wells. Light it up. Wells slammed her hand down on the activation panel. The ship's lights flickered as power surged into the dimensional core. The bridge crew watched in awe as reality itself seemed to bend around them. By all the stars, Cooper whispered, it's actually working. The Prometheus began to glow with an impossible light. Where the hull had been solid, it now seemed to flicker in and out of existence. Energy readings that should have been impossible began registering on the Watcher's sensors. What is this? The Watcher commander's voice had lost its arrogance. What are you doing? Showing you what humanity is capable of, Reed responded calmly. Dr. Wells, take us into the 7th dimension. Wells activated the final sequence. The ship shuddered as dimensional barriers that had stood since the beginning of time began to part. Around them, space itself seemed to fold like paper. They're firing. Cooper shouted. Energy beams from a dozen Watcher ships converged on the Prometheus. But where they should have struck shields or hull, they passed through empty space. The Prometheus was both there and not there, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Core stability holding at 90%, Wells reported, excitement breaking through her professional demeanor. Commander, we can move anywhere in regular space. Their weapons can't touch us. Reed stood from his chair, watching the panicked movements of the Watcher fleet. Send the signal to Admiral Blake. Phase 1 successful. He turned to his crew, pride evident in his voice. Ladies and gentlemen, you are now part of history. We've just proven that humanity's primitive understanding of physics has surpassed 50,000 years of Watcher science. The Prometheus hung in space, flickering with impossible energies, while the Watcher fleet scrambled to understand what they were seeing. Their laughter had stopped, replaced by a silence that spoke volumes. Humanity's moment had arrived. The space around the Prometheus rippled like water. Where once there had been normal vacuum, now reality itself bent and twisted. The ship's hull phased between dimensions, appearing solid one moment and ghostly the next. The sight was enough to make even the veteran Watcher commanders question their sanity. Status of the dimensional fold, Commander Reed asked, his voice steady despite the strange sensations washing over the bridge. It felt like being everywhere and nowhere at once. 7-dimensional planes successfully breached, Dr. Wells reported, her eyes fixed on readings that shouldn't have been possible. We're existing in all of them simultaneously. The Watcher's sensors must be going crazy right now. She was right. The Watcher fleet's formations had broken down into chaos. Their ships fired weapons uselessly into space where the Prometheus had been microseconds before, only to find their target had shifted to another dimensional plane entirely. Incoming transmission from the Watcher flagship, Lieutenant Cooper announced. They're demanding to know what we've done. Reed nodded. Put them on screen. It's time they learned what humanity is truly capable of. The main screen flickered to life, showing the Watcher commander. The alien's silvery skin had lost its usual luster, rippling with what humans had learned to recognize as extreme agitation. This is impossible, the Watcher commander said, its multiple eyes blinking rapidly. Our sensors show you existing in. No, this violates every law of physics we've established. Your laws, perhaps, Reed replied calmly. But humanity has a habit of rewriting rules we don't agree with. Dr. Wells, demonstrate. Wells pressed a sequence of commands. The Prometheus shifted, and suddenly they were viewing the Watcher fleet from above. Another shift, and they were below. Then behind. Then in spaces that had no proper spatial description in human language. By the Ancient Ones, the Watcher commander whispered, "You've actually done it. You've breached the 7th dimension." Core holding steady at 95%, Wells reported with a smile. "Should we show them what else we can do?" Reed nodded. "Begin Phase 3. The Prometheus moved again, but this time differently. Instead of shifting position, it seemed to exist in multiple places at once. The Watcher fleet's sensors showed hundreds of copies of the ship, each one as real as the last, each operating in a different dimensional plane. Panic spread through the Watcher fleet. Ships began firing randomly, their carefully planned formations dissolving into chaos. Each shot passed harmlessly through one version of the Prometheus, while the real ship operated safely in dimensions their weapons couldn't reach. Message from Admiral Blake, Cooper reported. The Watcher blockade is breaking up around Earth and the colonies. They're retreating. Wells looked up from her station, her eyes shining with triumph. "Commander, we're getting energy readings I never thought possible. The dimensional barriers aren't just letting us through. They're feeding us power. The more the Watchers try to stop us, the stronger we become." The bridge crew watched in awe as their small ship, once dismissed as primitive, brought the mighty Watcher fleet to its knees without firing a single shot. Reality itself bent to their will, turning the laws of physics into suggestions rather than rules. "Incoming priority message," Cooper announced. "From the Galactic Council itself." "Put them through," Reed ordered, straightening his uniform. The council chamber appeared on screen, but this time there was no laughter. The assembled representatives of the galaxy's most powerful species sat in stunned silence, watching as humanity demonstrated mastery over dimensions they had thought unreachable. "Perhaps," Reed said to the silent council, "it's time to reconsider humanity's position in the galaxy. We came to you as equals, offering to share our discoveries. You responded with mockery and threats." He paused, letting them see as the Prometheus shifted through another impossible set of dimensional movements. "The question now is, What will your response be this time? The council members looked at each other, their previous arrogance replaced by something new, respect tinged with fear. They had laughed at humanity's claims, and in doing so, had failed to see the truth that the youngest spacefaring race had somehow surpassed them all. The seventh dimension had been breached, and with it, the balance of power in the galaxy had changed forever. The Watcher flagship loomed ahead, its massive hull dwarfing the Prometheus. Once a symbol of galactic superiority, the mighty vessel now seemed less impressive as the human ship phased in and out of reality around it. Commander Reed watched from his bridge as Dr. Wells prepared their final demonstration. All dimensional barriers are stable, Wells reported, her fingers dancing across the control panel. We're ready to show them exactly what seventh dimensional travel means. Reed nodded. Begin the sequence. Let's show the Watchers why they should have listened when we offered to share our technology peacefully. The Prometheus flickered, then vanished completely from normal space. The Watcher flagship's sensors went wild, trying to track a vessel that existed in dimensions they couldn't even detect. Then, impossibly, the Prometheus appeared inside their shields. How? The Watcher commander's voice crackled through the comm. Our barriers are absolute. Nothing can penetrate them. Nothing moving through normal space, Wells corrected, allowing herself a small smile. But we're not limited to that anymore, are we? With precise movements, the Prometheus demonstrated its new capabilities. It phased through the flagship's hull, as if it weren't there, appearing in their engine room, then their bridge, then their weapons control center. At each point, it existed just long enough to show it could have disabled any system it wanted. Their weapons are powering up, Lieutenant Cooper reported, though he sounded more amused than concerned. Let them, Reed replied. Dr. Wells, show them why that's pointless. The Prometheus split its existence across multiple dimensional planes. To the Watcher's sensors, it appeared as if dozens of copies of the ship surrounded their flagship. Each copy was real, yet unreal, existing in dimensions their weapons couldn't touch. Energy buildup in their main guns, Cooper announced. Hold position, Reed ordered calmly. The Watcher flagship fired, its most powerful weapons unleashing streams of energy that could have vaporized a small moon. The beams passed harmlessly through every version of the Prometheus, unable to affect a ship that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Message from Admiral Blake, Cooper said. The Watcher fleet is standing down across the solar system. They're requesting permission to withdraw. Reed exchanged a look with Wells. Not quite yet. Doctor, initiate the final demonstration. Wells typed in a complex sequence of commands. The Prometheus shifted again, but this time differently. It phased partly into the seventh dimension, allowing the Watchers to see, for the first time, what their sensors had been trying to comprehend. The ship glowed with impossible energies, its hull seeming to extend in directions that shouldn't exist. Reality bent around it, showing glimpses of other dimensions bleeding through. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. By the Ancient Ones, the Watcher commander whispered, the power readings, they're off any scale we've ever developed. This is what we tried to share with you, Reed said, his voice firm but not unkind. Humanity didn't develop this technology to wage war. We developed it to explore, to learn, to grow. You could have been part of that. The Prometheus moved one final time, positioning itself simultaneously at multiple strategic points around the Watcher flagship. A clear message. If this had been a real attack, their most powerful ship would already be disabled. Commander, Cooper called out, the Galactic Council is broadcasting on all frequencies. They're requesting an immediate conference with Earth's leadership. Tell them we accept, Reed replied. But this time, as equals. The Watcher flagship hung motionless in space, its crew watching in stunned silence as the Prometheus finally settled back into normal space. The demonstration was complete. Without firing a single shot, humanity had proved itself more powerful than the galaxy's oldest civilization. Power levels normalizing, Wells reported. The dimensional core is stable and ready for sustained operations. Reed looked at his crew, pride evident in his expression. Send word to Admiral Blake. The blockade is over. And let Earth know. He paused, allowing himself a small smile, that the galaxy isn't laughing anymore. Around them, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if welcoming humanity to its new place in the cosmic order. They had changed everything, not through violence or force, but by understanding the universe in ways the older races had never imagined possible. The power of the seventh dimension had been unleashed, and with it, humanity's future was unlimited. 1 month after the Prometheus demonstration, Earth's main conference hall was filled to capacity. Representatives from every major galactic civilization sat where once only the Council's transmissions had been displayed. The same beings who had laughed at humanity now watched with keen interest as Dr. Wells stepped up to the podium. The principles of seventh-dimensional travel are actually quite simple, she began, displaying holographic models in the air. Humanity's breakthrough wasn't in forcing our way through dimensional barriers, but in understanding how to work with them. In the audience, the Watcher scientists leaned forward, their silver skin rippling with intense focus. Their 50,000 years of research was being politely but thoroughly proven incomplete by a species they had dismissed as primitive just weeks ago. Commander Reed stood at the back of the hall, watching with Admiral Blake, as Wells explained humanity's greatest discovery. The Prometheus, now joined by 2 sister ships, patrolled Earth's orbit, not as weapons, but as symbols of a new age of exploration. The key was changing our perspective. Wells continued. Instead of seeing dimensions as barriers to be broken, we saw them as layers to be understood. The universe wasn't keeping secrets from us. We just hadn't learned how to listen properly. A Watcher scientist raised their hand. But the energy requirements, our calculations showed they would be impossible to manage. Wells smiled. Because you were trying to force your way through. We found that the dimensional barriers themselves could provide the energy we needed. The more we worked with them, the more they worked with us. In the month since the blockade ended, everything had changed. The Galactic Council had been reformed, with Earth holding a permanent seat. Trade routes had reopened, but now Earth's ships carried scientists and teachers instead of just cargo. The galaxy's younger races looked to humanity with hope, seeing that even the oldest civilizations could be surpassed through innovation and determination. We're here today not to boast, Wells said, her voice carrying through the hall, but to share. What humanity discovered belongs to all sentient beings. We want to explore the seventh dimension together, to see what other wonders await us there. Admiral Blake leaned closer to Reed. Hard to believe it was just a month ago. They were trying to blockade us into submission. Reed nodded. Amazing what a little dimensional travel can do for diplomatic relations. The presentation continued, with Wells patiently answering questions from scientists who had spent lifetimes studying dimensional physics. There was no more mockery, no more condescension, just genuine curiosity and eagerness to learn. Outside the conference hall, viewers across the galaxy watched the proceedings. On thousands of worlds, beings who had never thought much about humanity began to see them in a new light. The species that had mastered 7 dimensions wasn't hoarding their knowledge or using it for dominance. They were sharing it freely. The future we see, Wells concluded her presentation, is one where all species work together to unlock the universe's mysteries. The 7th dimension is just the beginning. There are more wonders waiting to be discovered, more barriers to be understood, not broken. As applause filled the hall, Reed thought back to that first meeting with the Council, when their laughter had echoed through Earth's defense chamber. The memory didn't bring anger anymore, just a quiet satisfaction. Humanity had proven itself not through force or violence, but through understanding and innovation. The Watcher representative approached Wells after the presentation, its silver skin showing patterns of respect and admiration. "We were wrong about your species," it said simply. "You have taught us that age does not equal wisdom, and that innovation can come from unexpected places. Wells accepted the acknowledgement with grace. We all have something to teach and something to learn. That's what makes the galaxy such a fascinating place. As the conference concluded, Reed watched the various species mingling, sharing ideas and possibilities. The Prometheus had done more than prove humanity's capabilities. It had opened a new chapter in galactic history. The laughter had stopped, replaced by something far more valuable: respect, cooperation, and endless possibilities. Humanity had changed the galaxy not by conquering it, but by understanding it in ways no one had imagined possible. And this was just the beginning.